Welcome to Enlightened Connections, where we explore intuition, animal communication, healing, consciousness, and the deeper wisdom that connects us all. I'm your host, Lisa Aston Michael. Please follow the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you once again for tuning into Enlightened Connections. Today's guest is Kim Alexander. Kim is a professional animal communicator, psychic medium, and intuitive healer whose extraordinary gifts have been with her since childhood. From the age of 4 or 5, Kim knew that she experienced the world differently, but it wasn't until a powerful premonition came true when she was just 13 years old that she began to realize there was much more to her experiences than coincidence. Following the tragic loss of both her mother and grandmother, Kim chose to close herself off from her abilities. She didn't quite yet understand. Yet one quiet certainty remained with her, the deep knowing that she would somehow reconnect with her mother again in this lifetime. That moment arrived in 2013 during a hypnotherapy session, an experience that profoundly changed the course of her life and opened the door to a deeper understanding of her intuitive gifts. Inspired by her own healing journey, Kim undertook formal hypnotherapy training in 2016, where her abilities as a psychic and medium began to unfold. Then, following the heartbreaking loss of her beloved bulldog Ginger in 2017, another gift emerged: animal communication. Today, Kim helps both people and animals through her work as an animal communicator, psychic medium, and intuitive healer, offering guidance, healing, and connection during some of life's most challenging and transformative moments. Please welcome Kim Alexander. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm very happy to be here with you.
I'm very happy to have you here. I have a lot of questions for you because I know our listeners are very keen to hear about your journey and what your knowledge and skills are that you can share with them today. But before we go the deep dive, let's have a look at your early journey. So you experienced psychic awareness from a very young age, but we did talk about a very devastating premonition. At 13, everything changed for you. So looking back now, how do you view that experience and what did it teach you about living with intuitive abilities?
It's funny because I had, when my gifts, like when everything started kind of exploding for me in 2013, I actually had a medium say to me, "How come you didn't tell your mom the feelings that you were having?" And I had no clue. I didn't know what I was feeling. I just thought they were, you know, uh, I just thought it was just something I was worrying about because it was a very tumultuous time in our lives also. My mom and dad were going through a very, very difficult divorce. And my sick grandma had moved in with us, and it was just, there was a lot going on. And, you know, I, yeah, I didn't know what to do with it.
What actually
And
were you feeling? What were you seeing? What happened?
so I was laying in bed at night, and this happened about, I don't know, I think it was 3 or 4 nights in a row. And I would just lay there and I would think, what am I going to do if I lose my mom? I was just worrying about that. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to go live with my dad. And it's not that my dad was a bad person, but he was an alcoholic and he was very scary when he drank. And, you know, my mom was like my protector. But I also was very protective of my mom too. And then, I couldn't fall asleep, and then finally I would fall asleep, and then the next night I would have the same thing, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And then the next night, and then it came up to the weekend, and it was my time to go with my dad for the weekend. And we were it was Sunday, and we were driving in the car, and my dad had a girlfriend at the time also, and I liked her. There was no, like, it was a good time for me to be with them. My dad was sober, obviously, and we were on a Sunday drive. And I'm sitting in the back seat of the car, and I still remember this so vividly, like I'm sitting there right now. And I'm in the middle because I get car sick, so I have to see out the front window, and all of a sudden, my eyes fixate on the clock in front of me. My dad had a digital car back in the '80s, and all of a sudden, I was sitting there, and my body, it was like something jolted me, and I felt like it pushed me back into the far corner of the car, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh," but I actually didn't move. I was just sitting there, and it was like my whole body just, like, did this thing, and then all of a sudden, I'm just like, "Whew," like, back in my body, and I'm getting chills right now telling you this,
Yeah, me too.
and
Yeah.
and come to find out, so I feel like this is gonna sound crazy, but I feel like the clock was around 3:30, 3:33, and when so anyways, day continues on, nothing, no more feelings, nothing like that. I'm feeling all right. And then at 8 o'clock that evening, my dad had to take me home because I had school the next day. And so we come around the corner, and there's a cop car sitting in front of the house. And I immediately start shaking. And I'm just like, oh no, what is this? And I could tell that the house was all dark inside, but the outside porch lights were on. And my mom's car was actually not in the driveway. So my dad pulls in, and obviously there's something going on. So he gets out. I think my dad had intuition also, psychic
Mm,
also.
mm,
And so he gets out of the car. I go up to try to get in the house. I can't get in the house. It's locked. He walks around to the side to look inside the garage. My mom's car is in the garage.
mhm,
And we're like, "What the heck?" And so all of a sudden, a policeman comes around the front of the house. And because my dad and I are standing there ringing the doorbell, can't figure out what's going on.
mm,
And I turn around and I see him, and I start shaking even harder. And at this time I feel like I'm jumping up and down. And he says to us, he's like, "Do you live here?" And my dad's like, "Well, yeah, this is my daughter. I'm dropping her off, blah blah blah." And he says, "Well, there's been an accident." And I'm just like, at that point, I'm like, "Oh God." And I'm like, "Is my mom okay?" Immediately. And he's like, "Well," he goes, "I don't know." He's like, "There's two numbers that you have to call." And so my dad and I are like, "Oh my gosh." So we get in the car and we go over to our friend's house. They just live around the corner. And this is like 8 after 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. And so we're ringing the doorbell, and they let us in, and my dad gets on the phone and he starts making phone calls. And so my dad has to so it was my mom and my grandma and then another woman in the car, and it was her car and she was driving. And so I'm like in my dad's face, listening to the phone conversation, trying to hear what's going on. And he's describing my grandma, and then he has to describe my mom. And so because my mom, they were in two different places. And all I hear is my dad go, "No, I can tell her." And oh my gosh, I'm gonna start crying. I looked at him and I was like, "Well," and he's like, "I'm sorry, Kim, they're gone." And I was like, "What?" And it took three adults probably to hold me down because I was flipped out. And whew, I didn't know this was going to hit me like this today. And my dad looks at me and he says, "I'm so sorry. I wished it was me." And I grabbed his face and I said, "No, don't you say that." And that was that. And we just kinda sat there, shocked and numb for a little bit, and then we left because it was late. And I remember we we went back. My dad was house sitting, so we went back to the person's house that he was house sitting, and because my dad had to get a few things, and then we went back over to my mom's house, and we stayed the night, and it was the first time my dad was in the house probably in close to a year, maybe, and we both slept out in the family room, and I remember I think it was that night, I'm not sure exactly, but I remember having a dream that my mom, the in the hospitals, the big double doors that they have
Mhm.
that you can walk through.
Mhm.
I remember her coming through those and saying, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't die." And then I remember waking up and I was just like completely deflated. And I just, at that time, and then, I forgot, I gotta back up. After we found out, we went over to my oldest brother's house to let them know what was going on. It My mom was his stepmom, and so and then we had to get a hold of my brother who met us over there, and we had to tell him, and I remember at that moment I knew that I had to be strong, I had to stand strong, and that I also was never, ever gonna let anything like that come through again. I didn't ever wanna know anything like that again in my life. And, of course, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
But I was really good at shoving everything down. Anything that came through, I just shoved down. And my dad, it was that era that, you know and in the 1980s, they didn't have necessarily any kind of help for the loss of parents or counseling or anything like that, and my dad didn't believe in it any either, so it was, I kinda had to just move on, shove it down and move on and go on with my life and just kind of, I hate to say, but, like, silently suffer. And it wasn't until and then, throughout the years, I would get, like, pokes here and there of like, "Hey, here's your intuition." And I was always fascinated with psychics and, all of that and mediums, but I never really had, like, a medium reading, I just never thought about it.
Mm.
And then it was in 2013 when I met a girl and I told her the entire story. Oh, the thing that I left out was that night when we found out about my mom, I always knew that I would see my mom again in this lifetime. I just didn't know how.
Mm.
And that stayed with me for all those years. So then when I met the gal and I was telling her the story, and she looks at me and she says, and I didn't share that part with her. She says, "Well, do you want to see your mom again?" And I was like, "What?" "Yeah." And so she told me that she did spiritual hypnotherapy. And she's like, "I can take you to see your mom." And
Mm.
I'm like, "Are you like, what?" I never heard of that. And it was basically like a past life regression, kind of.
Mhm.
And so anyway, so she came over a couple weeks later and we did it. And I saw my mom. I
Oh,
saw my
wow.
mom not only in one life, but two other lives. And this gal that I met, she showed me how I can now connect in with my mom and, talk to her. And after that, the floodgates opened. I wanted to know everything I could possibly know about everything and anything.
Mhm.
But I still didn't know about animal communication.
We'll get to animal communication, but I'm keen to just flush out a little more about your journey with psychic mediumship. So when this when this girl that you spoke with, this lady you spoke with, took you there and showed you how to reconnect with your mum, are you able to share with us how you do that? Can you do that at will? Do you do that any time that you want to reach your mum, or
Yes.
is there a procedure that you go through or something that you have preparation that you have to do?
Yeah, so when I first started doing it, I went into meditation, and I is what I was told was just listen. Just listen.
Mhm.
And they say, like, listen to the first thing that you hear and go with that. Like, don't doubt what you're hearing. And then I don't know at what point I learned about asking for signs.
Mhm.
And that is what I counted on to so I would tune into my mom and I would hear her talking. And then I would be like, "Okay, if I'm really hearing you and it's you that I'm talking to, I need you to show me something." And so the number 8 came up. So, like, 888. And and so if you turn 8 sideways, it's also the infinity sign.
Mhm.
So what's really interesting is I got it validated by a medium. She says, "Your mom is standing in front of you and she's doing the infinity sign." And I just was like, "Oh,
Oh, wow.
oh my God, it really is her. I really am talking to her." I just got massive chills. And so that is what kept me going. And the more and more I did it, the more I could just drop into it. I didn't need to go into a meditation. I could talk with my eyes open, driving down the road, and instantly, I would get a sign for her. But then I'm like, "Are you sure? Show me another one." And then,
Yeah, it's a big thing, isn't it? We question everything, we doubt everything. We bring our conscious minds and our questioning minds and our skeptical minds into everything because it's just such a different feeling, isn't it? Blending or connecting with the spirit world. It's just a different feeling that you really can't describe until you experience it for yourself. And then you realize it's just as real as the world that we are living in as physical beings, aren't we? It's just as real once you experience that. Uh, so that's amazing experience that you've had there. Do you do readings and things for other people? Are you able to connect other people to their loved ones as well?
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I talk to everything.
Is it
Everything. Energy, I do psychometry, even elementals like fairies and gnomes. Yeah, I can connect with everything.
I find the trees are really responsive. If you ever go up to a tree and there's no wind, no breeze, no nothing, and you just allow your energy to expand and allow it to sort of merge with the tree's energy and just say hello. Or, I mean, they don't obviously, I'm not saying that they understand the word hello. You could say the same word in Italian or Portuguese, but it's the energy of the greeting. And the little leaves start quivering and things start moving. And when I first started doing that, I thought, oh, there must have been a breeze. And then after the first few times, I'm like, there's no breeze. What's going on here? Oh my God, these
Yeah.
plants are actually responding to me. So, yeah, I can understand what you're saying about everything is energy and how you connect with everything that's energy. So, let's move a little bit now into having a chat about ginger and how ginger opened this world up for you. Let's talk a little, if that's okay with you,
Yeah.
to talk about
Yeah.
ginger, because there's some big moments in your life here that you've had to process quietly, silently, on your own. But I feel also, Kim, that that solo processing was part of the spiritual growth that led you to the abilities that you now have. And, I've had this conversation before with psychics and mediums and animal communicators. And the one common denominator I find is that there's always seems to be a crisis attached to this spiritual awakening, the heart just going whoosh and opening right up. There always seems to be something that breaks our hearts open. And I wonder, is that because was it shielded? Were our hearts shielded? And these crises that are always love related, may I add, tend to happen and just break down the walls of our hearts where we just are open. And then these amazing abilities come to us. So tell us about Ginger's gift.
It's we just passed her 10-year anniversary. We lost her in 2016. The day after my birthday, I had to say goodbye to her. But she came into my life. I was her fourth person, and I actually, this sounds so bad, but I was going to look at her, not necessarily to get her, but just to see like what a quote miniature bulldog looked like. And I wasn't under the impression that she was up, that the woman was going to let her go. But we pulled up, and as soon as I saw her, I could hardly get out of the car fast enough. And I ran, well, I didn't run, but I walked over to her and I got down on my knees, and she took her little front paws and put them up on my body. And I was like, oh, whoa, whoa, what's happening here? And so the woman, we walked, and I kept looking at Ginger, and I was like, I think I want her. I want this dog. I want her to be, she needs to come with me. And so she was talking about breeding her dogs or whatnot. And I said, well, what about her? What about Ginger? She goes, well, if I don't sell her, I'm going to breed her again. And I was like, what? And I'm like, okay. I said, well, and I asked her, I was like, well, okay, well, how much are we talking? Like, obviously I needed to know how much I was going to pay
Mm.
for her. And she says, well, I have $4,000 into her. And at that moment, I was like, I didn't care if she said she was going to be $10,000. I was like, I am taking this dog off of your hands. Thank you very much. And I came across Ginger on the internet of all things. And so anyways, so I came back the next day, and this is like a 2.5 hour drive after I get off work that I've got to go get her. And I was worried about timing and all of that. And so anyways, we get her, and I bring her home, and she she was quite skittish. She was afraid of my boyfriend, men. And I was like, oh gosh, is this gonna work? Because it was kind of, I don't know, I was like, I was worried.
Mm.
And so I ended up, I had a job that I could take my dog to work every day. And so I took her to work with me. And that very first day, I had her I had her leash off, and I wasn't thinking about it, and all of a sudden she wandered off, and I was like, "Ginger." And she came right back to me. And I was like, "Huh. Okay." So there was an immediate, my point in telling this is there was an immediate connection with her. I just felt like this really strong soul connection, but yet I didn't understand it.
Mm.
And she went everywhere with me. She was she was the best little dog. I just felt like this gigantic hole that had been in my heart for so long was finally getting filled up. And also at that time where she came in, I had just recently moved to California. I was going through a divorce also, which was not the most pleasant thing. So she came into my life during a tumultuous time, and I had just this job was fairly new to me as well. So there were, those things, and then getting this little dog. And so that was I think that was 2007 when I got her. So then years went by, and it was 2013 when the hypnotherapy and all of that, and then 3 years went by, and that's when I went to hypnotherapy school.
Oh,
Yeah, I decided that I wanted to do that myself, but I didn't know about mediumship or any of that yet. That started the beginning of 2016, and shortly after I started, Ginger started having some health issues. I kept having a feeling that it was more than they said it was. And so anyways, I continued going through the hypno school, and my same friend that did the original hypnotherapy session on me, she invited me to a weekend of a mediumship course, class, gathering. And I was like, I'm like, well, that sounds really interesting, but I'm not a medium. And she's like, well, let me ask him if you can come. Let's see what he says. And he was like, yeah, bring her. And so I was like, okay, what the heck? I'll go. And so during that weekend, I found out that I was a medium and that I could do psychometry, which is crazy. It was mind blowing to me because I was like, oh my gosh, like, how do I know this stuff? How do I know this woman had an Indian headdress underneath her bed? And she's like, nobody else has said that today. And there's like, I don't know, 25 of us in the class. And I was like, that's weird, and not really, just I taking it lightly, like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then I was reluctant to let the psychic gift come in because of the knowing things that I didn't necessarily want to know. So that I kind of kept that at bay. So then fast forward a few months, Ginger started getting really sick to the point of where I was starting to have feelings of losing her. And I was actually having dreams the year before about losing her, like her drowning, like all this. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, no, I'm not ready for her to go. And I mean, we never are.
no.
And I was talking to my medium friend on the phone, and she says, Kim, have you ever heard of an animal communicator? You should call one. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, haven't you heard of one? And I said, no. And so she's like, I think you should get in touch with one. And she gave me the name of somebody, and she was in England. And so I called her and we had a session, and Ginger wasn't super sick at that point. She was sick, but we didn't know what was wrong yet. And so I get on the phone with her, and there were things that she would not have known. No way she would have known that Ginger said. And I was like, this is mind blowing to me. I was like, oh my God, I wish I had known this like years ago. And I'm sorry that the timeline is like really, because it's
That's
been so
okay.
long. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm trying to
I can
remember.
see how it's all weaving in as well. I can see how it's all coming in and going back out and coming in and going back out. And I think one of the things that I just want to touch on, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but with the animal communicator that you spoke with, isn't it interesting how I'm probably saying this a bit early in the conversation, but I find that you can't do it with your own animals. You ca- You're too emotionally close. It's a little bit why doctors don't, perform surgery on their wives or their children. There's too much emotion involved, and try as you may, they say, "Well, practice on your own animals." And I just feel that it's you can't. You need someone outside, even if you're a professional like yourself, professional animal communicator. When it comes to your own, you need someone else. You're too
Yeah,
close. Yeah.
yeah,
So let's
yeah,
come back to that. So she gave you information about Ginger that she couldn't have possibly known. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and we didn't really get any, like, anything going on in her body or anything. I don't think I was supposed to know. That's what I think, because shortly after that, she went downhill fast. And I was taking her to acupuncture, like, I was doing everything I possibly could. We thought she had a bladder issue, kidney issue. And so I was doing acupuncture. We thought she was getting better. And then it turns out she just, like, in the, like, snap, she was, like, downhill. And so I had her in an emergency hospital, and they said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do for her. She's pretty stressed out," and I was stressed out, and they're like, "I think you should come get her." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "This is the end." And so of course, me and my husband, we were an absolute mess, and it was his first time ever dealing with anything like this. And I said, "Well," I said, how long do I have with her?" And they said, "Just a couple of days." She's and you could tell by this point that, she's done. And so I had a woman come over who's was like I don't know what you call them, like a death doula maybe?
Yeah.
He would come over and perform the transition. And so we let her go. It was June 14th, and I I was a mess. It was like losing my mom all over again. It stirred up not just her, but it stirred up my mom, and I was just like, I didn't know if I was gonna be able to get through this. I'm like, "Oh my god," you know? And I ended up reaching out to the animal communicator again because I just couldn't stand it. I had to hear from her immediately. And it was funny because she couldn't see me, the animal communicator, and I was laying in my bed and I was crying and I was a mess and I was just like, "Oh my god, what's she gonna say?" And the animal communicator starts she's not laughing, but she's giggling because it was funny. But at the time, she says, "Ginger is telling me to tell you to get your something like mini butt out of bed, stop crying and get out of bed." And I started laughing because I was in bed, and
Yeah.
I ripped those covers up and I said, "All right, I'm up." And I was like, Ginger can see me. She knows. She can see what I'm doing." And I'm like, "She's still here." And so again, I started asking for signs. I was like, "Show me a sign." And then I started seeing, like, I would see bulldog stickers on the back of cars. My husband, we had a little Boston Terrier at the time, and I said, "Let's take Charlie and go to the beach." And we were sitting there and we were eating some lunch, and I start crying and I'm like, "Oh," and my husband was just like, "Oh my god, you gotta pull it together." And I'm like, "I can't." And all of a sudden I look over and there's a French bulldog sitting there looking at me. It
Isn't it
wasn't an
incredible?
English I know, it wasn't an English bulldog, but it was a bulldog. And I was like, "Okay, I'm okay right now." So I just, it was just these little signs that I would get each time I would break down and I would be able to keep going. And I mean, it was hard. Don't get me wrong. Ugh.
So
And so,
did this then take you into the path of learning about animal communication?
yep. So then I was like, "You know what? If I can speak to spirit, dead people, that's what I call them, why can't I talk to animals?" And so I found a woman who was semi-local. She was down in Southern California, and talked to her on the phone. And she says, "Well, hey, Kim, I'm having a weekend of like an introductory animal communication course. Why don't you come on down and check it out?" And so I went down and we sat there, and there was a group of other people, and she gave us, some tips of kinda how to get in with the animals because it's different than tuning in with people or spirits. It's you have to go to even a higher theta space. And I I started tuning in. I don't get the information. It was very like little things here and there, not like it is now, but I was getting it. And she came outside and she's like, "Kim, oh my God, you're like a natural at this." And I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yes." She's like, "You're amazing." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "I don't even know what I'm doing, you know?"
Mm.
So that was like a huge boost from her. And so I decided to jump in and take her courses. And I ended up going through three different people, three different mentors until, so I actually almost quit at one point
Mm.
because I had a really bad experience. And I was like, well, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And then if it wasn't for a weekend workshop that I had gone to, if it wasn't for a woman that came up to me and said, "Kim, I don't think that you should give up on this. I have a woman that you can contact. I think you should call her."
Mm.
And I was like, you know, you don't just get information like that randomly.
Mm.
I think I'm going to call this woman. And as soon as I got on the phone with her, I was like, "Oh, it's her. It's her who I need to finish up my mentorship with."
Yeah.
And that was, I think, by the beginning of 2018, I was practicing a
Where you
lot.
where you need to be. Sometimes it takes a few teachers, doesn't it, to sort of find the right one that, and every one of them is like every one of them serves the level that needs to be served, and then you just move on from that for sure. And now you're a professional practicing animal communicator, and I feel that people understand what that is now. Going back maybe 10 years, it was like you were saying, "What? What the heck is that? I've never heard of that. What are you talking about?" And now, of course, we understand that not only can we communicate with animals, we can communicate with, as you said earlier, trees and plants and all sorts of everything that contains energy because of that oneness that we all are. And we now know that we can communicate with those in the spirit world, including our dogs and our cats and our beloved family in fur. But I just wanted to ask you here, many people who experience intuitive abilities like you did or you have as children, they learn to suppress it mostly out of fear. And you, of course, yours was very fear-based because you had the premonition of losing your family there. But what advice would you give to someone who feels that they may have those gifts but doesn't really know where to begin exploring them safely and responsibly?
For me, it was at that time, Facebook was a big help. Finding groups, because there's a lot of groups out there on Facebook that have like psychics, intuitive, animal communication groups. And being that you have that they might have the intuitive abilities, feel into, look at these groups, join them, observe, like see what they're saying. If they're doing any kind of like practicing or any tips. That's what I was doing, is I was just joining and looking for as much information as I could find. I would do search on people. I would find like-minded people, and they might know of somebody. Put it out there to the universe that you want some guidance. Like, okay, I'm ready for my gifts. Show me where I'm supposed to go. Lead me, show me the way. And you might get a thought in your head of a person, or you might meet somebody, you might get an email. I would just dive in and start joining groups, books. Yeah, we have so much access to different people, books, websites, but I definitely would go with what feels good to you energetically. And I always tell people, like, feel it in your body. You'll feel it physically in your body.
Right. And I guess what you're saying is, I think it was The Road Less Traveled, that poem. I think it might have been Rumi that it originally, so I'm not sure. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that little saying that says way leads to way. So if you start that journey, as you're saying, the intention is there. Am I right in saying that the intention, I'm ready to learn this. I'm ready to awaken, to open up to this. Send me where I am to go for my highest good and for the highest good of all. Show me. And things, you're right. Things do appear. They kind of get put in your pathway, don't they?
I just think putting it out to the universe. And the other thing that I did too was I actually worked with oracle cards to kind of help get my intuition going. Like, I would start out pulling cards for people,
Yeah.
and then it would help me to kind of get into the energy. And then it got to the point where I didn't use the cards at first. I would just start talking, but then I would pull a card at the end and it would validate everything I just said.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting what you've just said, because again, I have spoken to a number of psychics and mediums that say the same thing that you've just said. It helps to open that gateway, whether it's, someone might say, oh, show me your palm, and they're not even a palm reader. They're a medium, or they're a psychic, but just saying that, it's opening the energy of the person that you're sitting in front of, because a lot of people can sometimes be quite skeptical, can't they? And if you just start with, oh, let me pull a card for you, or show me your palm, show me your hands, or whatever, and people go, oh, yeah, okay, or what's your birth date? Anything at all to just open people up, to get them out of that restricted space that they're in, because they're very nervous when they come to someone like you. It's like, oh my God, what's she going to tell me? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? What's going to happen? So to get them kind of relaxed, that's a beautiful way to do it, isn't it? Reading a card and then, as you say, closing it at the end. That just seals the deal, doesn't it? But I did want to also ask you, some of the listeners, they're all animal lovers, but some of them have experienced their animal companions having passed into spirit. When you communicate with animals in the spirit world, do you feel like they're alive?
I definitely get their essence as soon as I tune into them. Their little personalities, like their little quirks, and they'll tell me about themselves. I always, when I'm working with a client, I always ask them, okay, what are your questions? Let's get your questions. But for me, when I first tune in, I just let the animal talk, say whatever it is that they want to say. Cause, they always talk about us. And by the time the animal has finished talking, almost 100% of the time, they have already answered the person's questions.
Yeah.
But I still go through and make sure that we get them answered. But yeah, it's a different feeling though when they're in spirit versus if they're still here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite know how to explain it.
Mm.
Yeah, I need to figure out how to explain that.
That's what I was saying right at the very, very beginning of this, when I said, oh, to explain, well, and we were talking about psychic mediumship, to explain it to someone is near on impossible unless you've experienced it. So it's interesting to hear you say it's the same thing with animals in spirit, how you define them between animals that are still here, psychic readings, psychically picking up on them, as opposed to picking up on them in a mediumship way in spirit. How do you describe that? You've got to feel that, haven't you? You've got to experience that. Very hard to describe, because it's a feeling, isn't it? It's a sense. Yeah.
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 Well, and as you know, that's how the animals communicate, is with all of their senses. So, and every animal communicates differently. Some might talk, some might show you video, they might, they might show you smells, tastes, or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I know as I have continued down, my journey, they talk in sentences to me. I can keep them, I don't they're not in sometimes they come in quickly and leave quickly, but sometimes I can keep them focused for, long enough that I get a good communication from them. And for me, I use all of my senses with them. I know not a lot do. A lot of animal communicators do, or that's what I've heard. But yeah, and my experience also is I don't know about you, but I'm not letting taste come
No,
through.
no.
And I'm starting to get tastes and I'm like, "No, no.
Oh,
No,
no,
no."
thank you. Uh-uh.
Did I
We've
answer your question?
Yes, you did. And
Okay.
I also wanted to ask you, do you feel that ginger is assisting you with the animal
Yes,
communication work, as bringing those 2 that need your help and need your guidance and connection? Yeah? So she's helping you from
absolutely.
the spirit world. They don't leave us, do they? I believe they don't leave us.
So we have soul contracts with the animals just like we do, say you and I have a soul contract.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop, and we travel life to life. It's not just this life that we're with them. And I don't know if you've experienced, but they're not always our animal. They might be a daughter, or they might be a human. And I know there's a lot of people that, oh, that's not possible, and I'm like, uh, it is. I've had several animals tell me that. And some of them you can tell that this is their first time being a human. It's I just feel like anything is possible, and I feel like each of my communications, I feel like there's more and more information, learning, like we're not done learning with them. There's so much more, being able to go on a really deep soul connection with them, to know that, I always tell people, I'm like, "No, they're not a little furry
Yeah.
nothing." I mean, there is a lot of soul to these animals. There is so much brilliance, and, they're more spiritually advanced than we are.
100%, 100%. I think we're the most archaic species. We just keep seeming to go backwards, and they're moving forwards in so many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And not just communicating with domestic animal companions, but also those in the wild. There's been a lot of, I don't know if you've experienced this, but the water beings really coming forward in a very big way and making themselves known, whether it be whales or sharks or dolphins or whoever, but the water beings are definitely trying to get our attention, and in any way that they can, to show us what's happening in the ocean and the water worlds, here on the earth, which is going to play an even more important part in our future. I have a question for you, and this is a little message for the skeptics, because let's face it, we were all skeptical at some point in time. Even those of us who do this work, we were all, huh? What? Nah, at some stage. So, for listeners who are curious but uncertain about psychic phenomena or mediumship or animal communication, what would you say in your own experience has given you the greatest confidence that consciousness and connection actually do continue beyond the physical world? I know you've had connection and communication, but for you personally, I mean, what was that moment for you?
Been so many. I think that first seeing my mom again in this lifetime, being able to see her, when you do a hypnotherapy session, it takes away your ego. So it takes away any doubt of anything. And when I saw her that first time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, there is something to this. There is something that I thought when I was a little kid." And then the 13-year-old having the premonition. and then meeting the friend 28 years later. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would be sitting here right now having this conversation. And just all the signs that I get, you just cannot make it up because it
Right.
happens right when you ask it to.
Mm.
And they get stronger and, and just like, just trusting and having faith in it. More comes. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for the experiences that I've had because I never in my wildest dreams thought that I could ever be truly happy. And then because the darkness that I carried for so long and kept it quiet cuz it's like you don't want to burden somebody with the
Yeah.
things that happen in life.
Yeah.
And now it's like for me, I get to share my experiences with people and letting them know that there actually is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is help out there. You have gifts, don't be scared of them.
Yeah.
There's lots of people out there that can help and guide. And I was so fortunate to find exactly the right people at the right time of what I needed.
Well, that leads me beautifully into talking about finding the right people at the right time for the right thing. This conversation today is absolutely beautiful. And for those listeners, I'm going to give you some details now how you can reach out to Kim. You can find her on her website at kimalexander.com. So kimalexander.com. And on Instagram at divinemgirl888. At Facebook, that's quite a big one, so we'll probably be able to find the Facebook link on Kim's website. And you can also find her email address at divinemgirl888@gmail.com. Those are the details to get in touch with Kim, and I suggest that you do because I have read her testimonials and some of them are absolutely extraordinary, very clearly showing the beautiful work that she does and the skills and abilities and gifts that she possesses. So before we go, Kim, I always ask my guests one question. If you had one message for the world right now, what would that message be?
It would be about animals. I would highly encourage to have a communication with your animal. It not only will enlighten your life, but it will give you a different perspective, a different relationship with your own animal. And I also feel like it shifts your entire life, the way that you look at things.
Wow. Okay. There's some beautiful advice there. So listeners, do get in touch with Kim at kimmalexander.com. Thank you so much for listening. And Kim, thank you so much for your time today. You are a wealth of knowledge and skills, and your journey, bless you, has been a challenging one, but a necessary one so that you could walk the talk and be the real deal for people that are experiencing that journey that might be a little unsettling and a little frightening and a little difficult for some to follow. So it's a beautiful thing that you're such a guiding light for those that may need that guidance. Thank you for your time today, Kim. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been an honor to be with you today.
Bye for now. Thank you for being here and for listening to Enlightened Connections. I hope today's conversation offered you insight, reflection, or a deeper sense of connection. If this episode resonated, please follow or subscribe and share it with someone who may benefit. All resources mentioned in this episode are listed in the show notes. You can also join me inside the Enlightened Connections Facebook community. I would love to welcome you there. Until next time, take gentle care, stay connected, and trust the whispers.